On today's show, the Houston Rockets with their softest and, quite honestly, most disappointing loss of the season to the Golden State Warriors with no Steph Curry, no Draymond Green. What happened? Why couldn't this Rockets team take care of business? We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop a comment while you're there. Just tell me why you hate the Warriors. That'll be good enough. Or just say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Subscribe to the new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate that. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym, or in this case, if you're listening to this episode 2.5 days after the game actually took place. If you're listening to this episode, you're a real sicko. Sorry, I was super under the weather Thursday and Friday. I finally got my legs back under me on Saturday, so trying to get this episode out. So I want to share some thoughts, talk about this game a little bit, especially considering the fact that the Rockets have to face this exact same Warriors team again Wednesday, this upcoming week, in the NBA Cup quarterfinals game. And this loss, 99-93, tied a franchise record for consecutive losses to the same opponent. The Houston Rockets now have 15 straight losses to the Golden State Warriors dating back to the 2020-2021 season. They did have 15 straight losses to the Lakers before, all the way back in the 60s. So the Rockets are poised to potentially set a new franchise record if they lose to the Warriors again in the NBA Cup quarterfinals game, which would suck. So, not a great spot to be in if you're the Rockets, especially considering you lost this game with no Steph Curry, no Draymond Green playing for the Warriors. Really an embarrassing loss, the most disappointing loss of the season, and easily the Rockets' softest loss of the season. Let's hear from Ime Udoka after the game.
What made it difficult to sustain anything offensively?
Guys weren't sharing the ball. All the things that we've done to get a decent record have kind of gone out the window the last few games, and so that was a big part of it. Obviously, is you got to come with some energy, some juice from the start. A few guys really didn't look like they showed up till after halftime, but still, with all that said, you hold somebody at 99 with two guys really hurting us, Kuminga and Wiggins, 56 out of 99, and you're struggling offensively to get rebounds, to hold on to the ball, to play with physicality, aggression, and some assertiveness. And so one of our softest games since I've been here for sure.
Ime said it. You heard the man. Soft performance. That's what it was. Look, I want to talk about Sengun and Jalen, their individual performances in this game, and I also want to at least end on a bit of a positive note a little bit later on. Hopefully some adjustments, some things we see differently going into the next time the Rockets face this Warriors team. Also got to talk about Steven Adams, who is the only Houston Rocket in this game. I think every other Houston Rockets player should be disappointed and upset with themselves for their performances, especially the five starters. The starters just did not have it in this game. But Adams with his best game of his Rockets career. We'll talk about those things a little bit later on. But I want to piggyback off what Ime was talking about here for a moment. This was not the Houston Rockets team that we've been watching all season long. This is not the Houston Rockets team that clawed their way up to and was the second seed, or is the second seed, whatever, in second best team in the Western Conference. This is not the same Houston Rockets team that won against OKC last Sunday. It's not. This is the most disappointing performance of the Rockets all season because they didn't stick to their identity. This Rockets team has carved themselves out an identity of being a hard-nosed, defense-first, physical team. And they have a couple very specific win conditions. Clearly, their number one win condition is out-rebounding their opponent. But not just out-rebounding their opponent. It's out-rebounding their opponent and generating second-chance opportunities. Because this Rockets team, flat out, sucks at shooting the basketball. They're awful. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA when it comes to shooting. When it comes to shooting three-pointers, when it comes to effective field goal percentage, true shooting, whatever stats you want to look at, this Rockets team is bad at shooting the basketball. So how do you make up for that? You take 2 and 3 and 4 tries to make a shot, and that's how the Rockets make up the difference. In this game, the Rockets shot 37.6% from the floor, 26.3% from downtown. Those are terrible numbers. The Warriors also shot awful percentages, only 41.9% from the floor and 32.1% from downtown. But it didn't matter. The Rockets defensively, even though they gave up a career night to Jonathan Kuminga, who had 33 points on 13 of 22 shooting, they held the Warriors to just 99 points. You hold a team under 100, you played solid enough defense to win a basketball game. The Rockets' biggest issues here were their offense, or was their offense. And again, it was their lack of sticking to their win condition, which was the rebounding, in particular, the offensive rebounding and those second chance points. The Warriors out-rebounded the Rockets 54-45 in this game. And on top of that, the Rockets were -2 in the second chance points department. The Rockets had 7 second chance points to 9 second chance points by the Warriors. That can't happen. This Rockets team is not the Boston Celtics. They're not the OKC Thunder. They don't have an abundance of guys who can just light it up from the perimeter or get hot and suddenly the Rockets just win with an avalanche of three-pointers. They don't have a superstar talent like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jason Tatum or whatever to help carry them through a game where, the team can't come together and play winning team basketball. They don't have some of these other luxuries that other elite teams in the NBA have. They don't. The moment they stray from their identity, the moment they get away from being that dominant physical basketball team that's going to crush you on the glass, that's going to generate those second and third chance opportunities, that's when they start losing games. And that's what we saw. That's what we saw against the Kings. That's what we've seen now against the Warriors. And the Rockets have now, for the first time this season, lost back-to-back games because they're getting away from their identity. You heard Ime Udoka talk about it just a moment ago, right? They're not doing the things that they've done all season long to start out with a pretty strong record, right? They're getting away from their identity. Not having Tari Eason certainly hurts in this game, but that's not the sole reason for this loss. But it is a factor because, frankly, there have been a lot of games this season where the Rockets starters come out of the gate and they don't look like they have it, right? They don't have the juice, quote unquote, that Ime Udoka was talking about. And so it's a huge benefit to be able to take the Terror Twins, Amin and Tari, throw them in the game, and then they change the complexion, right? In this one, they only had Amin Thompson. No Tari Eason, who's still out due to concussion protocol, and still on the injury report ahead of the Rockets-Clippers game as they round out this West Coast swing. So that's unfortunate there because Tari is a big part of the Houston Rockets' success. He's a big part of their ability to generate those offensive rebounds and generate extra opportunities on offense. But outside of that, I mean, the other area that you look at in this game that the Rockets have to get better at moving forward, they foul too much. They foul this Warriors team a ton. They sent them to the free throw line 27 times. Now, thank goodness the Warriors only hit 18 of them for 66.7%. So only 18 of 27 at the foul line, leaving a lot of points there. It would have been a much uglier game if the Warriors shot an even halfway decent percentage from the foul line. But that was the flow of this game. The Rockets showed very little resistance to the Warriors. They got downhill pretty much at will. Very little resistance in and around the rim. And the Warriors do play a style of basketball, right, with all their flex cut actions and off-ball movement. Like, it can be difficult at times to keep track of guys, and there's certain little, backdoor actions and off-ball plays that make it really hard to slow down these guys. But there were also moments in this game where the Rockets just had really poor game plan discipline. Just didn't put a body in front of Kuminga on his downhill drives, or went under screens on certain shooters that you shouldn't go under screens on, especially guys who were knocking down shots in this game. So, it was an ugly loss. It was a disappointing loss, but it's also disappointing for a bunch of factors to do with the starting lineup. In particular, Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green and their performances in this one. I want to talk about what those two guys brought to the table, or I guess didn't bring to the table in this game, as well as getting to final thoughts, hopefully some adjustments and some positivity to wrap up this show. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Look, with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right. So, really quickly, I want to put one more point in here about both on the fouling side of things. First off, I don't know how the Rockets fouled Andrew Wiggins, not once, not twice, but 3 different times from beyond the arc. Absolutely beyond me. That's poor attention to detail. That's poor game plan discipline. That's lazy defense. All that. And then for Kuminga, who has gone off not once, now twice against the Rockets, you gotta imagine that Kuminga has to be a little pissed seeing 2 of his draft classmates from the 2021 draft class, in particular Jalen Green, who also played for the G League Ignite, securing their rookie extensions, right, getting paid, and Kuminga didn't get paid, right, is going to hit restricted free agency this next offseason. That's got to be like a sore spot for him, so he, I'm sure, wants to go out and ball out every single chance he gets against those 2 guys, against Jalen and Alp in particular. But let's talk about those 2 guys. Let's talk about the Rockets' 2 cornerstones here, because they were both super disappointing in this game. There's no any other way to slice it. We're going to start with Alp, because he's had this tendency over the last couple weeks or so where he's seemingly decided that he's just not going to show up offensively in the first half of these games. Or in this game in particular, he didn't show up until the fourth quarter. He was 2 of 10 from the floor when he checked in the fourth quarter. And then granted, he was in the fourth quarter, and he had an incredible fourth quarter. He hit 5 out of 5 shots. He got to the free throw line, hit 2 there. He had 12 points. 12 of his 16 points all happened in the fourth and final quarter. You can't do that. You can't be, if you're going to be the team's best player, you cannot be missing in action for 3.5 quarters of the game. You just can't. You cannot do that. The Rockets' offense is too reliant on Alperen Sengun and his offensive production, his ability to collapse a defense, draw a double team, kick it out to shooters, score the ball himself, be a threat, in pick and roll. There's too many things that this Rockets team relies on him to do for him to be a flat out non-factor offensively and to be held to just 2 of 10 shooting going into the fourth and final quarter. He's too good. That's the other thing, is he's just flat out too good. I don't know, like, Kevon Looney shouldn't be able to check Alperen Sengun. He shouldn't. I don't know if it's just lack of aggression, if it's he missed a lot of shots that he probably should have hit. Out of that 2 of 10, there were a lot of looks in there that probably would have gone down if this was last year's Alperen Sengun. I don't know what the issue is with him, with the touch around the basket or whatever it is, but man, Alp's got to get it figured out, because the Rockets cannot be a focal point of a team offensively and give the team like nothing through 3.5 quarters and then just turn it on in the fourth quarter. It's worked a couple times, right? It worked against the Wolves. It worked again against the Philadelphia 76ers, but that is not a recipe for success. The Rockets can't just rely on Alp to show up in the fourth quarter and go through the rest of the game and be like, oh, well, okay, Alp. No, it's disappointing, because we know that Alp's better than that. He is so much better than that. And again, I don't know what Ime has to say to him. I don't know what adjustments the Rockets need to make to be able to get him going sooner and earlier in these games. But he's got to wake up. Ime said it in his clip, right? That certain guys didn't show up until after halftime. And Alp absolutely falls into that category. There was a point in this game where I thought to myself in the fourth quarter, as the Rockets, because they made a couple little pushes in that fourth quarter to cut it to, a 1-point game here or there, or a 3-point game, 1-possession game. They just could not get over the hump offensively. And I thought to myself, don't put Alp back in the game. He's been awful. He doesn't deserve to close this one out. Ime thought different. Ime put him back in, and he had a strong close to the game. He did. But he's got to be better than that. You cannot have, if you go look at any other team in the NBA, if Jokic doesn't show up for 3.5 quarters, if SGA doesn't throw, now maybe that's a bad example because the Thunder have a lot of really good supporting cast members. But look, this Rockets team's not built that way, right? They need Alperen Sengun's production every night. When Dillon Brooks talked about it the other game and said, sometimes you, sometimes me, always us, he made sure to point out that Alp brings his game every night. The Rockets' recipe for success not only is dependent on generating those offensive rebounds and those second chance looks, but it also accounts for and relies on Sengun putting up a solid 20 and 10 every single night. They need that 20 plus points scoring from Alp, and then they need one or two other guys to step up on any given night to have a chance to win games. So when your most consistent offensive player doesn't show up for 3.5 quarters and waits until the very end of a game, of course it's going to look ugly, and that's why it looked ugly in this game. Now, on the flip side, for Jalen Green, Jalen had one good quarter of basketball in this game. In the third quarter, as the Rockets kind of, put together a little bit of a run, had a solid performance there, whatever. He had 8 points. Fred and Jalen had their best quarters of the game, really their only good quarters of the game, in the fourth and final period. Fred had 10 points on 4 of 8 shooting. Jalen had 8 points on 2 of 5 shooting, but he did go 4 of 5 at the free throw line, so drew some fouls there. But the fourth quarter, man, the fourth quarter was flat out ugly from Jalen Green. It was awful. It was awful to watch him play in the fourth quarter. He made one bucket. He had one tough drive where he drove in, hung in the air, and finished, I believe, over the top of Kevon Looney, if I'm not mistaken. It was either over the top of Kevon Looney or Trace Jackson Davis, one of the Warriors' bigs. And it was a tough finish. But outside of that, that's the only bucket that he had in the fourth quarter. And he only had 4 points in the fourth and final quarter. And 2 of those 4 points were gift wrapped to him by Gary Payton II, because Gary Payton II had a loose ball foul while Jalen was trying to box out for a defensive rebound. And the Warriors were in the bonus, so it sent the Rockets all the way down to the other side of the court where Jalen got to hit 2 free throws. But these are the hot and cold stretches of Jalen Green. And he wasn't even really that hot in the third quarter. He just got downhill a couple times, he drew a couple fouls, and he was able to put up 8 points. But outside of that, outside of the third quarter where he had an it wasn't even a hot quarter, he had 8 points on okay, shooting percentage. Not even great, 2 of 5 shooting. I don't know what else to say, but he crumbles under ball pressure. Jalen absolutely crumbles when there's any amount of ball pressure on him. And that's what we saw in this game. Whether it was Wiggins checking in, whether it was Kuminga checking in, whether it was Gary Payton, Moses Moody, Brandon Pajemski, the scouting report is out on Jalen Green. If you put a little bit of ball pressure on him, he gets uncomfortable, can't get downhill, and when he's not hitting his shots from outside, which he was 0-4 in this game, he just doesn't bring much else to the table. 4 of 16 shooting's not going to cut it. And not only that, but as the Rockets were mounting their comeback in the fourth quarter, as they had multiple chances in the fourth quarter to get over the top and take the lead and whatnot, the kind of deciding play of the game was with about a minute and a half to go. The Rockets won a challenge on what was originally called off the Houston Rockets, an out of bounds, call on the Houston Rockets. Rockets challenge it. Turns out the ball was off of Jonathan Kuminga on the drive, or Wiggins, whoever it was. And Rockets get the ball back. They're down 93-89. They have a chance here. They had a chance, down 4 with about a minute and a half left to go, to be able to cut it to a 1-possession lead. And they had a little bit of momentum here. They were doing a good job. They clawed back into it a little bit, only down 4. And Alp was flat out rolling at this point. Despite his transgressions for not showing up for the first 3.5 quarters, he was absolutely cooking the Warriors in that fourth and final frame. So at this point, minute and a half to go, Jalen Green gets the ball. Rockets run a little kind of split cut action at the top of the key. Alp has a DHO set sort of thing, and first it's Fred runs by. Then Jalen gets the ball downhill, and Jalen draws Kevon Looney because the Warriors had to switch some actions, and Alp had Andrew Wiggins on him, and he had him sealed in the post, down low. Like, that is the most advantageous matchup you could hope to get in that circumstance. And instead, Jalen Green decides to drive on Kevon Looney, who's a very switchable, great defender, right? Hasn't had barely any success against Looney all game long. Drives on Kevon Looney and then decides to flip the ball back out to the perimeter. He gets bumped a little bit. I saw Rockets fans say, that's a foul on Kevon. No, it's not. It's not. It's not a foul. Just if that foul got whistled on the Rockets, if that foul got whistled on Alperen Sengun and Kuminga was the one who received the benefit of it, Rockets fans would be pissed because it's not a foul. Kevon Looney was just maintaining his space and Jalen Green bounced right off of him. Then Jalen throws the pass backwards directly into the lap of Gary Payton II. And that was pretty much it. That was pretty much game at that point. Look, I don't know how you don't get it to LP in that situation. I don't. Jalen at that point had missed every shot except for one so far in that quarter. And that was the biggest turnover of the game because the Rockets had some momentum going into that possession and they could have given it to LP and he could have gotten another bucket and it would have been a one possession game, come back down, get one more stop, come back down, get one more bucket by LP or at least collapse the defense and kick it out to a shooter, which, hey, LP did one of those too in crunch time. He collapsed the defense. He kicked it out for a wide open Jalen Green 3, couldn't convert. Again, 1 of 6 shooting in that quarter. But between Sengun deciding to be MIA for basically the entire game and only showing up at the end, and then with Jalen Green and his overall offensive performance, 4 of 16 shooting, only 14 points, and that really the biggest turnover of the game at the very end, it's just not good enough. If those two guys are going to play that way, and if Fred's going to play the way that he did, which he's really struggled since his 38-point outing against the Thunder. He's had 2 back-to-back really bad games, 13 points, 5 of 16 shooting for him. Dillon Brooks, 15 points, 6 of 13 shooting. Not a great, efficient offensive performance, but, you take what you can get with DB, and then with Jabari, only 2 of 8 shooting. It was just a flat-out disappointing and frankly disrespectful performance from the Rocket starters. They know that they're better than that. We know that they're better than that. And I honestly wonder if there was a little bit of it's the Warriors and they don't have Steph and they don't have Draymond and they had that mentality of it'll be an easy win. There are no easy wins for this Rockets team because the moment they take their foot off the gas, the moment they stray away from their identity of being that dominant physical team where you can't take nights off, you got to bring that identity every single night, you're going to see more and more losses like this. So the Rockets need to turn it around. They need to figure out what is wrong, and they need to get back to being who they are on the basketball floor to be able to start winning some games again. Coming up, I want to talk about some final thoughts from this one. Got to get to some of a couple positives from this game. Steven Adams with his best game of his Houston Rockets career as he finally turned the corner, and hopefully some adjustments and things that we see before the next time these two teams meet up. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, take a look at all the different odds available. Check out their parlay builder, take a look at the different season awards or season leaders, or just check out the favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Lions plus 270, the Eagles and Bills are both plus 500, the Chiefs plus 550 right behind them, and then rounding at the top 5, the Baltimore Ravens a ways off at plus 1,000. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, one more thing I want to highlight here, because I know I went in on Alperen and Jalen there last segment, mostly because with Alperen, right, he's the team's best player. He can absolutely be better. With Jalen, it's been kind of the same old, this season, and it's going to continue to be the same old, and I can already hear it now, the comments in YouTube, Jackson's a hater, he doesn't believe in Jalen Green. I would redirect you to our last post-game recap pod against the Kings, where Jalen had one of his most efficient, best games of the season, and yet he only touched the ball, only got one shot in the fourth quarter, right? And I was clamoring, I was saying, Jalen deserved more touches. Jalen should have gotten more touches down the stretch. Instead, Fred decided to hero ball, right? Fred took over the game, and it didn't look good, and yada, yada, yada. So when Jalen is playing well, I understand, like, he deserves touches. He deserves to be, have plays drawn up for him, whatever. There's no argument here in this game of like, oh, he didn't get touches or he didn't get an opportunity or he didn't have the ball in his hands. He got plenty of opportunity. He got plenty of chances. He had plenty of opportunities where he had the ball in his hands and he was running the offense. He also had opportunities where he was, play off ball, and he had catch and shoot opportunities where he could just knock down open shots, and he didn't do any of it this game. Again, really rough overall performance. So like there's not any excuses to be made. There's not any, oh, well, if Fred did this differently, or if Sengun did this, or if Ime changed this around and ran more plays. No, he just needs to make shots. It's that simple with Jalen. It really is. So let's get to a couple of the positives from this game, because there were a couple positives. First of which, the biggest positive, literally the biggest positive, because he's a massive mountain of a human being, Steven Adams in this game. Best performance to date as a member of the Houston Rockets. Finished the game plus 10 in his 18 minutes off the bench. He had 6 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists, and 1 block shot in 18 minutes of run. This looked like a lot more like the Steven Adams that the Rockets thought that they'd be getting their hands on to start this season. Now, it's been a little rough and tumble so far for Steven. I'm encouraged by his performance in this game. In particular, the fact that the Warriors are a team that play with a lot of movement. They rely on a lot of heavy screening from Kevon Looney, from Trace Jackson Davis, from their guys out on the perimeter. And I really thought that this was going to be ultimately a bad matchup for Steven Adams. But he held his own. And the Rockets were, again, plus 10 in his minutes on the floor. And when he's out there, he does make life easier for guys like Jalen Green, guys like Fred VanVleet, right? The screens that he sets offensively to free up guys to be able to allow them to get downhill and drive to the rim, to be able to, pardon me, to be able to get wide open threes if the opposing team is, dropping back and not showing at the level of the screen. It's great what he unlocks for this team, and he provides a different level of size and physicality on defense that even Alperen Sengun on his best days can't provide, because that's just who Steven Adams is. That's who he's been his entire career. So for him to have this type of a game, hopefully it shows that he's turned a little bit of a corner in his recovery process. And if he has, right, if he can be reliable to where the Rockets can bank on winning the Steven Adams minutes when he plays every night from here on out, that's going to be huge, because the Rockets bench was arguably the thing that made them one of the things, if not the thing that made them the most deadly, or the deadliest version of themselves this season, because of being able to bring Ime Thompson and Tari Eason off the bench. But being able to add Steven Adams to that mix, if he's healthy now, if he looks like himself again, or at least, 75, 80% of himself again, if he plays like this moving forward, that is monumental for this Rockets team. So loved what we saw to Steven Adams in this game, right? He was physical. He was getting rebounds. He had 4 offensive rebounds in this game, right? He was a man amongst boys in the paint. And he's still kind of getting his legs under him, right? He's still, like, you can still see that he's not quite moving at 100%, but this is the best performance he's had as a Houston Rocket, and hopefully it's something that he can build on and continue to improve upon, because if he doesn't go back, right, if he doesn't have any games like he did earlier this season where he looked like he was flat out struggling, then the Rockets have found their answer to the backup 5 spot, which has been one of the weakest spots in the rotation all season long. Elsewhere off the Houston Rockets bench, Sheppard. 7 points, 2 of 6 shooting, only 1 of 5 from 3. And again, I feel bad because I don't want to treat it like this is like another Jabari Smith Jr. situation where we're like, he's a shooter, it'll work out. The shot hasn't translated yet for Reed, and that part is a little bit disappointing. But at the same time, it is encouraging seeing him be more aggressive, seeing him out there actually looking for his shot, being willing to pull the trigger on so many different threes. Eventually, he's going to have like a breakout game where he hits like 3 or 4 or 5 triples, and we're going to be like, Reed Sheppard's arrived, and it's going to be awesome, right? It didn't happen in this one, but I liked the looks that he was getting. I liked how aggressive he was about pulling the trigger, and he had a couple threes that he took from like multiple steps outside the three-point line, right? Just coming up early in the shot clock, he gets the pass back, and rather than waiting for the Rockets like offensive action to develop or waiting to see if somebody else gets open, he's just like, oh, you're going to sag off of me and give me like a little bit of breathing room at the three-point line? Bang, I'm going to shoot. If he had just connected on one more three this game, we're talking about a 2 of 5 3-point shooting performance instead of a 1 of 5. That's a 40% night compared to a 20% night. Like it's literally a one-shot difference between looking at Reed and saying, 7 points on like, okay shooting versus 10 points on like, damn, okay, he shot 40% from 3. That's awesome, right? He hit 2 of them. So again, it is a little disappointing that Reed's shot hasn't translated quite just yet, but I'm liking the development, right? Liking the progress, liking what we're seeing out of him so far. One other note here, and this is a two-part thing. Well, I guess it's not a two-part thing. It's looking ahead at this next Rockets meetup with the Warriors when they come to town Wednesday for the NBA Cup quarterfinals game. Again, first and foremost, the Rockets need to do a much better job of not fouling the Warriors. Again, even in this one, like the ridiculous, the fouls on Wiggins, sending him to the 3-point line multiple times, or sending him to the free throw line from the 3-point line multiple times in this game. Again, poor game plan discipline, poor attention to detail, poor execution, just lazy, bad defense there. Letting the Warriors get downhill all the way to the rim, showing very little resistance on the perimeter. This Rockets team also, without Tari Eason out there, right, they're just a small team. Like, this is a very small team without Tari Eason in the mix, because you're playing Reed Sheppard, undersized, Aaron Holiday, undersized, Fred VanVleet, undersized, Jalen Green, undersized. Like, everybody across the board is undersized for this Rockets team, outside of, again, Jabari Smith Jr. is the only guy in the starting lineup who is above average, like, height and length for his position. Everybody else is undersized. DB's undersized, Sengun is undersized. And then when you come in with a bench unit of Aaron Holiday, Reed Sheppard, the Rockets just do not have a ton of size and length across the board. Meanwhile, the Warriors, their smallest player, Brandon Pajemski, and then outside of that, I guess it's Gary Payton II, but Gary Payton II plays big, and he's got springs, right? The dude can jump and can rebound with the best of them. So, that was kind of an issue there, and hopefully, knock on wood, Tari Eason is going to be healthy and out of concussion protocol in time for the Warriors game Wednesday. I would hope so, because he's currently in like stage like 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 during the concussion rehab process that the NBA makes players go through. So hopefully it's nothing serious there, and hopefully he'll be off the injury report before the Warriors game. But the other part of it is just, you got to find an answer for Jonathan Kuminga. The Rockets have not been able to slow him down at all in these 2 games so far. And I don't know if the difference is just like put one of your best defenders on him. I don't know if the Rockets are going to have to put one of Ime Thompson or Tari Eason on him to try to slow him down, but he basically gets whatever he wants against whichever defender is guarding him. And part of that has to do with the Rockets being so willing to switch so many of their actions. That is one of the downsides of a switch heavy scheme, where the Rockets do switch everything 1 through 4. And there were even situational like moments where Sengun accidentally would get switched on to Kuminga or Wiggins in this game, and then those guys would be able to turn the corner and still get downhill, fighting past Sengun, who was like showing at the perimeter or whatever. But you got to find an answer for slowing down Jonathan Kuminga. And that's going to become even harder now, because the Warriors didn't even have their 2 best players in this game. Like, that's the other painful part here, is the Warriors were able to outclass you without their 2 best players. Now, the benefit and the silver lining, and one of the positives, if you can take one away from a couple positives from this game, is the Rockets have had a lot of bad shooting performances so far this season. So they're kind of due for a good game. Like, they've had a few bad shooting performances in a row. So hopefully you finally get one where, like, if Fred has a big game, if Jalen has a big game, if Alpi gets back to form, like on any given night, the Rockets do have guys that can step up and have a big game or 2. The Rockets are going to need a couple of those big games against the Warriors, flat out. Like, you're not going to beat the Warriors unless you get a strong game from LP. You need one of Jalen or Fred to step up and have a big game, and you need one more guy out of the coalition of wings between Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., Ime Thompson, and Tari Eason. You need one of those 4 guys. You need one of the 2 guards, and you need LP to show up. And that's your win condition. That's your recipe for success. If you can get 20 plus out of each one of those 3 areas of the team, then you're going to be looking pretty good in this game, or in this next matchup against the Warriors. The last thing I will say here, I don't understand why Cam Whitmore was still at the G League for this game. Like, you knew you didn't have Tari Eason, and yes, Cam has his warts as a player. Yes, he at times is a little bit of a black hole offensively. But at the same time, like, this is a Rockets team that has flat out not been able to get it done in any shape or form against this exact same Warriors team, regardless of who the Warriors put on the floor. And the Rockets, through now what, like 5 straight games, I think it is? 2 games this season, 3 games last season. It's the exact same starting lineup. It's the exact same starting 5. It's Fred, Jalen, Dillon, Jabari, and Sengun have lost 5 straight times to this Warriors team. At some point, you've got to shake it up. At some point, you got to try something different. At some point, you got to just go with a wild card, right? And Cam Whitmore could be that wrecking ball, right? Cam Whitmore could be that guy that maybe you check him in the first half of this game and you give him the Aaron Holiday minutes. And if he starts dumpstering, right, if he's getting downhill and putting pressure on the Warriors defense and getting to the free throw line, and if he's on from 3 and he's connecting from downtown, maybe he has one of those insane performances where he, lights you up for 15, 20 points off the bench in a short amount of time. That's the benefit to a player like Cam Whitmore. And I understand why the Rockets have sent him to I understand why the Rockets have sent him to the G League. I understand they want him to get reps down there. I don't think it's doing much benefit for Cam, because at this point, Cam is a bucket getter. He is who he is. He needs to learn how to share the ball a little bit more offensively, but I think the reps with the actual Rockets team would be better served going to Cam Whitmore than Reed Sheppard at this point. Like, if the Rockets really wanted to get serious about the rotation, I think Reed should be the one to go down to the G League and practice running the offense and getting and hunting his own looks and finding his sweet spots on the court and creating for himself, all that stuff. Let Reed go to the G League, bring Cam Whitmore back up, give Aaron Holiday some minutes in the rotation, and then basically split those minutes between Aaron Holiday and Cam Whitmore, right? If you need Holiday, if you need the steady hand, if you need the veteran, then put him out there. If you want to take a chance on Cam Whitmore in the first half and see if he can light it up, see if he can get going from downtown and, win you a game in his minutes off the bench and be that scoring punch, then go with him. Because this Rockets team needs something offensively. They need a kick in the ass on offense sometimes. And Cam Whitmore can be that guy. He can be that lightning in a bottle player that you check in off the bench and win you a game simply because he gets hot and he scores a quick 10, 12, 15 points off the bench, whatever it is, in limited playing time, with little to no plays being drawn up for him. That's the other part. You put Cam out there in a lineup with, do Cam, Amin, Tari, Jabari, all around Sengun, right? Guys who are shooters and cutters who move well without the basketball, and then just let Sengun go to work. Make that the lineup at the top of the second quarter, where Ime's been pulling Sengun out early in the first quarter and then bringing him back late in the first or early in the second to kind of run those second unit groups. Do that with Sengun. Watch it work out beautifully. That's all I'm saying. I don't think Cam is really benefiting much from the G League run, and I think that Reed would probably benefit, honestly, more from it at this point. And the Rockets are sorely missing a guy with Cam's skill set at this point to be able to help them win games when nobody else has it going offensively, which is exactly what happened in this one. Nobody on the Rockets could get it going offensively until Alperen Sengun did in the fourth quarter, and by then, it was pretty much too little too late. So with that, those are final thoughts from this Rockets-Warriors game. I'm curious your thoughts. Tell me how you're feeling about this one. Tell me why you hate the Warriors. It's always a good excuse. Drop me some YouTube comments. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked on Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.